My fiancé's ex crashed our wedding in red, but what I did in front of everyone left him exposed. And everyone finally saw his true face. You won't believe this story, but I walked out of my own wedding just 5 minutes before saying I do. My name is Emily Parker. I'm 29 years old, and I work as an event coordinator. Ironic, isn't it? I spend my life making other people's special days perfect, yet my own wedding day turned into the biggest disaster I could never have planned for. I thought I had everything figured out with Nathan Cole, my fiancé of 3 years. He's a software engineer, steady, reliable, or so I believed. We'd been together since college, and everyone said we were the perfect couple. I should have known that perfect was just another word for hiding something. The morning of our wedding started like a fairy tale. I woke up in the bridal suite of the Grandview Hotel, sunlight streaming through the windows, my dress hanging there like a cloud of white silk and dreams. My bridesmaids were buzzing around me, doing my hair, my makeup, chattering about how beautiful everything looked. The flowers were perfect, the venue was stunning, and I felt like I was floating on air. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But Nathan seemed different that morning. When he came to see me before the ceremony, breaking tradition, but I didn't mind. He looked pale, almost sick. His phone kept buzzing, and he kept stepping away to take calls, claiming it was urgent work stuff that couldn't wait. I found it odd because Nathan had specifically requested time off and told his boss he'd be completely unreachable for the wedding and honeymoon. When I asked him about it, he just kissed my forehead and said, "Don't worry, babe. Just some last-minute client crisis. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was, actually. Nathan had never been the type to let work interfere with personal time, especially not today. But I pushed the feeling down, telling myself it was just pre-wedding jitters. Everyone gets nervous before their wedding, right? I was probably just overthinking things because I wanted everything to be perfect. The ceremony was set to begin at 4 p.m. By 3:30, all our guests were seated in the beautifully decorated garden pavilion. I could hear the string quartet playing softly, the gentle murmur of conversation and laughter floating up to my bridal suite window. My father knocked on the door, looking handsome in his tuxedo, tears already forming in his eyes. "Ready, sweetheart?" he asked, offering me his arm. I took one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked radiant, glowing with happiness and anticipation. My grandmother's pearl necklace caught the light, my veil cascaded perfectly down my back, and my bouquet of white roses and baby's breath smelled like heaven. I was ready to start my new life as Mrs. Nathan Cole. We walked down the aisle to the bridal march, and I felt like I was in a dream. Everyone was standing, smiling, taking pictures. Nathan was waiting for me at the altar, looking handsome in his black tuxedo, but I noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Our officiant, Pastor Williams, smiled warmly as my father placed my hand in Nathan's. Everything was perfect, exactly as I'd planned it. That's when she appeared. The double doors at the back of the pavilion burst open with a dramatic bang that made everyone turn around. A woman in a stunning red dress strode down the aisle like she owned the place. She was beautiful, with long dark hair, perfect makeup, and the kind of confidence that commanded attention. I didn't recognize her at first, but I saw Nathan's face go completely white, and his grip on my hands tightened painfully. "Samantha," he whispered under his breath so quietly only I could hear. Samantha. I knew that name, Nathan's ex-girlfriend from college, the one he dated for 2 years before we got together. The one he claimed he hadn't spoken to in years. The one who was supposed to be living in New York, working as a fashion designer. What was she doing here? What was she doing at our wedding? She walked right up to the front row and sat down in an empty seat that was supposed to be reserved for Nathan's elderly aunt. She crossed her legs elegantly, placed her designer purse in her lap, and smiled at us like this was completely normal. Like she'd been invited. Like she belonged here. The entire pavilion fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was staring, confused, waiting for someone to do something. I looked at Nathan, expecting him to ask her to leave, to explain what was happening, to protect me from this bizarre intrusion on our special day. Instead, Nathan just stood there, frozen, staring at Samantha like he'd seen a ghost. "Nathan," I whispered urgently, "what is she doing here?" He cleared his throat and spoke loudly enough for the guests to hear. Well, we can't cause a scene. Not with all these people here. We'll deal with this after the ceremony. Deal with this after the ceremony? My fiancé's ex-girlfriend had just crashed our wedding, and his solution was to ignore it? I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach. Something was very, very wrong here. Pastor Williams looked between us uncertainly. Should we continue? He asked quietly. Nathan nodded quickly. Yes, let's just continue, please. But I couldn't continue. I couldn't focus on the words Pastor Williams was saying because I was watching Nathan and Samantha. Even though she was sitting behind him, I could see him glancing back at her every few seconds. And when their eyes met, she would smile. Not a friendly smile, but something else. Something intimate. Something that made my blood run cold. During the exchange of rings, I noticed Nathan's hands were trembling so badly he could barely get my ring on my finger. Sweat was beading on his forehead despite the cool evening air. This wasn't normal wedding nerves. This was panic. Nathan, I whispered as Pastor Williams asked us to face each other for our vows. I need to know what's going on. Right now. Emily, please, he whispered back. Not here. Not now. I'll explain everything later, I promise. Later, always later. Just like with the phone calls that morning. Just like with all the times over the past few months, when he'd seemed distracted, distant, like his mind was somewhere else. I'd attributed it to work stress, wedding planning pressure, normal relationship stuff. But now, looking at his face, seeing the way he kept glancing at Samantha, I realized I'd been a fool. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Williams announced, Nathan and Emily have prepared their own vows. Nathan, would you like to go first? Nathan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He just stood there, staring at me with this expression of absolute terror. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Finally, he cleared his throat. Emily, he began, his voice shaking. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. Excuse me, I said loudly, stepping away from Nathan. I need a moment. I walked quickly toward the back of the pavilion, my dress rustling, my heart pounding. I could hear confused murmurs from the guests behind me. Nathan called my name, but I didn't turn around. I needed to think. I needed to understand what was happening. I ducked into the small preparation room behind the pavilion where we'd stored some extra decorations and supplies. My hands were shaking as I tried to calm down and figure out what to do. That's when I saw Nathan's jacket hanging on a chair. The one he'd been wearing earlier when he kept getting those mysterious phone calls. I'd never gone through Nathan's phone before. In 3 years together, we'd always respected each other's privacy. But right now, with his ex-girlfriend sitting at our wedding and him acting like a complete stranger, I felt like all bets were off. His phone was in the inside pocket of his jacket. My fingers trembled as I unlocked it. I knew his passcode because I'd seen him enter it hundreds of times. What I found made my world collapse. Message after message between Nathan and Samantha. Not old messages from years ago, but recent ones. Messages from last week, yesterday, even this morning. I scrolled through them with growing horror. I can't wait to see you again from Samantha sent 3 days ago. I know this is complicated, but you know how I feel about you, from Nathan, sent 2 days ago. Are you really going through with this wedding? From Samantha sent yesterday. I have to. But it doesn't change anything between us. Just give me some time to figure this out. From Nathan, sent yesterday. And then, the message that made me physically sick. I'm coming to the wedding. I can't let you do this without knowing that I'm still here, still waiting for you. From Samantha, sent this morning. Nathan's response sent just 2 hours ago. Samantha, please don't. Not today. We can talk after everything settles down. I need you to be patient with me. I dropped the phone like it was on fire. My legs gave out, and I sank into the chair, my beautiful wedding dress pooling around me like a symbol of all my broken dreams. Nathan had been having an emotional affair with his ex-girlfriend. Maybe more than emotional. I didn't want to read any deeper into those messages to find out. All those phone calls, all that distraction, all those times he seemed like he was somewhere else. He was. He was with her, at least in his heart, and she'd come to our wedding not to cause trouble, but because he'd basically told her to wait for him. That he was going through with marrying me, but it didn't mean anything. I felt like I was going to throw up. 3 years of my life. 3 years of planning a future with this man. 3 years of believing I knew who he was, believing he loved me the way I loved him. And it was all a lie. The worst part was realizing that I'd seen the signs. The way he'd been distant lately. The way he sometimes seemed to be holding back when he told me he loved me. The way he'd been less enthusiastic about wedding planning, leaving most of the decisions to me. I'd thought he was just being a typical guy who didn't care about flowers and centerpieces. But really, he was being a man who wasn't sure he wanted to get married at all. I heard footsteps outside the room and quickly put Nathan's phone back in his jacket pocket. A moment later, he appeared in the doorway, looking frantic. "Emily, what are you doing? Everyone's waiting. People are starting to ask questions." I stood up slowly, smoothing down my dress, trying to look composed even though I felt like I was dying inside. "I have some questions too, Nathan." He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. "Look, I know Samantha showing up is weird, but..." "Weird?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Your ex-girlfriend crashing our wedding is weird? That's how you'd describe it?" "Emily, please, let's just get through the ceremony and then we can talk about this properly. All these people came here for us. Your parents flew in from California. My grandmother is here. We can't just what, Nathan? Can't just be honest? Can't just tell the truth?" I took a step closer to him. "When did you last talk to Samantha?" He looked like a deer caught in headlights. What do you mean? It's a simple question. When did you last talk to your ex-girlfriend who just happened to show up at our wedding?" "Emily, you're being paranoid. I haven't talked to Samantha in years. I don't know why she's here, but..." "Stop lying to me." The words came out louder than I intended, filled with all the pain and betrayal I was feeling. "Just stop lying." Nathan stepped back, startled by my outburst. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I could hear the murmur of voices from outside. Our wedding guests wondering where we'd gone, why the ceremony had stopped. "I saw your phone," I said quietly. The color drained from his face completely. "Emily, I saw the messages, Nathan, all of them. I know you've been talking to her for months. I know she didn't just decide to crash our wedding on a whim. I know you told her to wait for you." He opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. "It's not what you think." "Really? Then explain it to me. Explain how it doesn't change anything between us, and give me some time to figure this out. Isn't exactly what I think it is." Nathan ran his hands through his hair, messing up the careful styling we'd paid good money for. "Emily, I love you. I want to marry you. Samantha is just... she's confused. She's trying to complicate things. She's confused? Or are you confused? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're planning to marry me while keeping her on the side as your backup plan. That's not true. Then why didn't you tell her to stay away? Why didn't you block her number when she started sending you those messages? Why didn't you tell me she was trying to contact you?" He had no answer for that. We stood there in silence, the weight of his betrayal settling between us like a wall. "I can't do this," I said finally. "Emily, please, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. I'll cut off all contact with Samantha. I'll do whatever it takes. You should have done whatever it took before today. You should have done whatever it took before you let me plan our entire future while you were having an emotional affair with your ex-girlfriend." "It wasn't an affair. What would you call it then?" I asked. "What do you call secretly talking to another woman, telling her she means something to you, making plans to see her behind your fiancé's back?" Nathan looked down at his feet. "I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. And now she's sitting in our wedding, watching you marry me, knowing that you told her it doesn't mean anything. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? Emily, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." I shook my head. "No, Nathan. We can't fix this. I can't marry someone who isn't sure they want to be married to me. I can't start my life with someone who's already planning an exit strategy." "That's not what I was doing, isn't it? Then what was your plan exactly? Marry me, keep talking to Samantha, and see which one of us you liked better?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I walked to the door, my hand on the handle. "I'm going back out there." "Emily, wait." "No, Nathan. I'm done waiting. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. I'm done being understanding about things I should never have to understand." I opened the door and walked back toward the pavilion, Nathan following behind me, pleading with me to reconsider. But my mind was made up. I couldn't marry this man. I couldn't promise to love, honor, and cherish someone who had already broken those promises before we'd even made them. When I walked back into the pavilion, all eyes turned to me. Pastor Williams looked relieved to see us return. The guests settled back into their seats, ready for the ceremony to continue. I could see Samantha in the front row, still sitting there like she belonged, watching everything unfold with keen interest. I walked to the center of the altar and turned to face the crowd. Nathan stood beside me, probably thinking I was going to continue with the ceremony despite everything. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "Thank you all for coming today," I said loudly, my voice carrying across the pavilion. "I know you came here expecting to witness a wedding, but I'm afraid that's not going to happen." A gasp went up from the crowd. I could see confusion and concern on the faces of our family and friends. My mother started to stand up, but my father gently pulled her back down. "I've just discovered," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word, "that the man I was about to marry has been having an ongoing relationship with his ex-girlfriend." More gasps, louder this time. Nathan grabbed my arm. "Emily, don't do this, please." I shook him off and pulled out his phone, which I'd grabbed from his jacket on my way out of the room. "Would you like me to read some of the messages out loud, Nathan? Or would you prefer to explain to everyone yourself why your ex-girlfriend is sitting in the front row of our wedding?" The silence was deafening. Samantha had gone completely white, probably realizing that her little dramatic entrance was about to backfire spectacularly. "I thought so," I said when Nathan remained silent. "3 days ago she wrote, 'I can't wait to see you again.' 2 days ago," Nathan replied, "I know this is complicated, but you know how I feel about you.' Yesterday she asked if he was really going through with this wedding, and Nathan told her, 'I have to, but it doesn't change anything between us.'" I could hear crying from somewhere in the crowd. Angry murmurs were starting to rise from the guests. I saw Nathan's parents looking mortified, and my own father looked like he wanted to punch someone. "And this morning," I continued, "just a few hours ago, Nathan told her that they could talk after everything settles down, and that he needed her to be patient with him." "Emily, stop," Nathan pleaded. But I was far from done. "So to answer the question I know you're all thinking, yes, Samantha Rhodes, Nathan's ex-girlfriend, is here because Nathan has been carrying on an emotional affair with her throughout our engagement. She didn't crash our wedding. She was invited in a way. Nathan told her to wait for him." The crowd erupted. People were standing up, talking loudly, some of them shouting. I could hear my mother crying, my father swearing, Nathan's grandmother asking someone to explain what was happening. But through it all, I felt strangely calm. For the first time in months, I was telling the complete truth. Samantha suddenly stood up and started walking toward the exit, probably realizing she'd made a huge mistake coming here. But I wasn't going to let her slink away that easily. "Samantha," I called out, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't leave yet. Everyone should get to meet the woman who was so confident that Nathan would choose her over me that she showed up to our wedding in a red dress." She stopped walking but didn't turn around. "Tell me, Samantha," I continued, "how long have you two been planning this reunion? How long have you been waiting in the wings for him to get tired of me?" She finally turned around, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "You don't understand the situation, Emily." "Oh, I understand perfectly. You thought you could waltz back into Nathan's life and pick up where you left off? You thought you could make him choose between us, and you were so confident you'd win that you decided to show up here and claim your prize." "It's not like that," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then what is it like? Explain it to all of us. Explain why you've been having intimate conversations with an engaged man. Explain why you thought it was appropriate to come to his wedding." She looked at Nathan desperately, probably expecting him to defend her or take some of the blame. But Nathan was just standing there, looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. "I loved him first," she said finally, and I almost laughed at how pathetic that sounded. "You loved him first," I repeated, "and that gives you the right to interfere in his engagement? That gives you the right to try to destroy what we built together? You don't know him like I do." "You're right," I said. "I don't know him at all. I thought I was marrying a man of integrity, a man who would honor his commitments, a man who would choose me every day. Instead, I was about to marry someone who keeps his options open, who says one thing and does another, who makes promises he has no intention of keeping." I turned to look at Nathan, who was standing there like a statue. "Is there anything you'd like to say, Nathan? Any explanation you'd like to offer? Any apology you'd like to make?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. And the fact that you never meant for it to happen doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. It means you were careless with my heart. It means you were thoughtless with our relationship. It means you took me for granted. I pulled off my engagement ring and wedding band, both of which had cost Nathan a fortune, and held them out to him. "I can't marry you, Nathan. I won't marry someone who isn't sure they want to marry me." He didn't take the rings, so I set them down on the altar beside the unity candle we were supposed to light together. "To our guests," I said, turning back to the crowd, "I'm sorry you came all this way for nothing, but I hope you understand that I couldn't go through with a marriage that was built on lies and deception. The reception hall is already paid for, and all the food is prepared, so please stay and enjoy yourselves. Consider it a celebration of honesty and self-respect instead of a wedding reception." I started walking down the aisle, away from Nathan, away from Samantha, away from the mess that my perfect wedding day had become. As I reached the back of the pavilion, I turned around one more time. "Oh, and Samantha," I called out, "congratulations, you can have him. But remember, if he'll cheat with you, he'll cheat on you too." Then I walked out of my own wedding, my head held high, my heart broken but my dignity intact. The next few hours were a blur. I went back to my hotel room and changed out of my wedding dress, hanging it carefully in the closet like the museum piece it had become. A reminder of the life I'd almost settled for. My bridesmaids came to check on me, bringing tissues and wine and fierce loyalty. My parents arrived shortly after, my mother crying and my father still muttering about what he'd like to do to Nathan. "I'm proud of you," my father said, sitting on the edge of the hotel bed while I sat in the chair by the window, still in shock. "It took incredible courage to do what you did today." "I feel like an idiot," I said. "How did I not see this coming? How did I miss all the signs?" "Because you trusted him," my mother said, holding my hand. "Because you loved him. Because you believed he was the man he pretended to be. That doesn't make you an idiot, honey. That makes you human." My phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from Nathan, but I'd turned it to silent. I wasn't ready to hear his excuses, his apologies, his promises to change. Some things can't be unsaid, some betrayals can't be undone, and some trust, once broken, can't be repaired. The fallout from the wedding was swift and brutal. By the next morning, everyone in our social circle knew what had happened. Nathan's reputation was destroyed. People who had respected him as a stand-up guy now saw him as a cheater and a coward. His own family was mortified by his behavior. His mother called me to apologize, crying and saying she'd raised him better than that. Samantha didn't fare much better. Her dramatic entrance backfired spectacularly when word got out about what she'd done. In the fashion industry, where reputation is everything, being known as the woman who broke up an engagement and crashed a wedding was professional suicide. She lost several high-profile clients and had to eventually leave New York and start over somewhere else. But for me, the real healing began when I realized that walking away from that wedding was the best decision I'd ever made. It wasn't easy. I'd lost 3 years of my life. I'd had to cancel our honeymoon. I'd had to explain to everyone why there were no wedding photos to post on social media. But I'd gained something much more valuable: my self-respect. 6 months later, I started my own event planning company. The irony wasn't lost on me that my expertise in planning weddings had been honed by planning my own disaster of a wedding. But I found that my experience made me better at my job. I could spot the warning signs when couples weren't ready to get married. I could sense when someone was having second thoughts, and I never hesitated to have difficult conversations when I thought a couple was making a mistake. My business took off faster than I'd ever imagined. Word of mouth spread quickly about the wedding planner who had walked away from her own wedding rather than settle for less than she deserved. Other women who had found themselves in similar situations reached out to me, sharing their stories, asking for advice. I became an accidental advocate for self-respect and authentic love. It was at one of my clients' weddings that I met Michael. He was the photographer, and I was immediately struck by how differently he approached his work compared to other wedding photographers I'd worked with. While others focused on getting the perfect shots, Michael seemed more interested in capturing genuine moments of connection and joy. He had an eye for authenticity that I found refreshing. We started talking during the reception, comparing notes about the wedding industry, sharing stories about bridezillas and groomzillas, laughing about the ridiculous things people do when they're planning weddings. It was easy conversation, natural and comfortable, and for the first time in months, I found myself genuinely enjoying a man's company. "Can I ask you something?" Michael said as we watched the bride and groom have their first dance. "And feel free to tell me, it's none of my business." "Sure," I said, curious. "I heard about what happened at your wedding." I mean, everyone in the industry has heard about it. And I just wanted to say that what you did took incredible strength. A lot of people would have gone through with it anyway, just to avoid the embarrassment. I looked at him, surprised by his directness. Thank you, that means a lot. I've photographed a lot of weddings where I could tell the couple wasn't right for each other. But they were going through with it anyway because they'd already sent the invitations and bought the dress and booked the venue. It's heartbreaking to watch people make such a huge mistake just because they're afraid of disappointing other people. I almost did the same thing, I admitted. For about 5 minutes I considered just pretending everything was fine and going through with the ceremony. But then I realized that would have been the real disaster. Getting divorced in a year or 2 would have been so much worse than calling off the wedding. Exactly, Michael said. You saved yourself years of unhappiness. You probably saved Nathan too in a way. If he wasn't ready to be married, forcing him into it wouldn't have helped anyone. That conversation was the beginning of something beautiful. Michael and I started working together on more weddings, then started dating and eventually fell in love. But it was different from what I'd had with Nathan. With Michael, there were no games, no hidden agendas, no secret conversations with ex-girlfriends. He was exactly who he appeared to be, honest, kind, creative, and completely committed to building something real with me a year and a half after my non-wedding Michael proposed. It was simple and perfect, no big production, no surprises that weren't welcome. Just the 2 of us on a quiet beach at sunset, promising to love each other honestly and completely. When I said yes, I knew with absolute certainty that this was right. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Our wedding was small and intimate, just family and close friends. No drama, no unexpected guests, no last-minute revelations. Just 2 people who chose each other every day, making that choice official in front of the people who mattered most to us. As I stood at the altar with Michael, exchanging vows that we'd written together, I thought about how different this felt from that day with Nathan. With Nathan, I'd been performing the role of a bride, playing out a fantasy of what I thought my life should look like. With Michael, I was just being myself. Completely, authentically, joyfully myself. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the way everything happened, if I wish I'd handled things differently, if I ever wonder what would have happened if I'd married Nathan anyway. The answer is always no. Walking away from that wedding was the moment I chose myself. It was the moment I decided that I deserved better than someone who couldn't choose me wholeheartedly. Nathan eventually married Samantha about 2 years after our non-wedding. I heard through mutual friends that their marriage was rocky from the start, probably because it was built on the foundation of betrayal and deception. When you start a relationship by cheating on someone else, it's hard to trust that your partner won't do the same thing to you. Last I heard, they were getting divorced and Nathan was dating someone new. Some people never learn. But I did learn. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from something that isn't right, even when it's scary, even when it's embarrassing, even when it means admitting you made a mistake. I learned that it's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't appreciate you. I learned that real love doesn't require you to compromise your self-respect or ignore red flags or pretend everything is fine when it's not. Most importantly, I learned that I am enough. I don't need someone else to complete me or validate me or make me whole. I am already whole, all on my own. When Michael came into my life, he didn't fill a void. He added to an already full life. He didn't save me. I saved myself. He simply chose to walk alongside me as I continued to build the life I wanted. Looking back now, I can see that my non-wedding was actually one of the best days of my life. It was the day I refused to settle. It was the day I chose honesty over comfort, self-respect over social expectations, authenticity over fantasy. It was the day I learned that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is admit you made a mistake and change course. I still plan weddings for other people, and I love what I do. But every time I watch a couple exchange vows, I remember that the real wedding isn't the ceremony. It's the daily choice. To love each other honestly, to show up for each other completely, to choose each other again and again, even when it's hard. The wedding is just one day. The marriage is the rest of your life. And I'm grateful that I waited for a man who was worthy of that daily choice, who would make that choice with me every single day, without reservation, without backup plans, without secret conversations with ex-girlfriends. I'm grateful that I learned in the most dramatic way possible that I would rather be alone than be with someone who couldn't love me the way I deserved to be loved. The little girl in me who dreamed of a perfect wedding day would probably be disappointed by how everything turned out. But the woman I became because of it, strong, self-aware, unwilling to compromise on what matters most. She's proud of the choice I made. She knows that walking away from that altar was the moment I truly began walking toward the life I was meant to live. Finally, I learned how not to beg for love from people who only know how to take. Sometimes, walking away is the most powerful way to stay true to yourself.